Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today we're going to talk about Dungeons and Dragons, and we're going to talk about Stranger Things, Season 1, Episode 1. We're going to talk about Jim Hopper. So Jim Hopper is the police chief in Hawkins, Indiana. And Jim Hopper. It's a terrible character. I really don't like this character at all, but there's something special here. And why is that? Well, it's David Harbour. So I think, I love, small screen content and big screen content. Love big screen content better than small screen. But don't worry, I think Stranger Things is going to be on a big screen very soon. I think the end of season 5 will be, wrapped up. Now, this is interesting. So who is Jim Hopper? Jim Hopper is... Jim Hopper's just a grown-up jock, like just a nothing human who's like, I was a jock in high school. The guy who knocked the books out of the hands of D&D players, caused a lot of, kind of lived on his privilege, and he's just kind of a nothing character, right? But David Harbour, why are we talking about Stranger Things? Because it is Dungeons and Dragons, and because people don't get this, right? But everything Dungeons and Dragons touches turns to gold. Stranger Things is the #1 streaming show in the world because of Dungeons and Dragons, and more than anything else. If the Duffer Brothers had done this show and had left Dungeons and Dragons out, it'd be nothing. It'd be forgotten, right? But this show has Gary's legacy at the heart of it. And I think David Harbour knew that the Duffer Brothers were onto something. And basically, he took this role, this Jim Hopper role, and he just poured everything he had into it, right? He was an actor. He was doing his job, just acting and, doing his thing. And I think when this role came up, I think David Harbour, more than anybody else, realized, oh my gosh, this is it, right? This show is going to pop, right? And I don't think it was because David Harbour knew that Dungeons and Dragons was involved. I think he just knew that, streaming was just coming out. The Duffer Brothers were really smart. I think when he got the script, he was like, oh my gosh, this is like nothing I've ever seen. And then he just poured himself into it. And and I think he knew, right? Like, if I crush it on this role, I will never be forgotten. And if I don't do everything I can to make this role work, I will be forgotten, right? And I think he was right? And so, but Jim Hopper is amazing because of the role because of the passion and intensity and adamancy that David Harbour invests in this role. Now, Jim Hopper is really important, and the reason why is Stranger Things is about Dungeons and Dragons. This is my Dungeon Master viewing of Stranger Things, watching all 4 seasons together, viewing it from the perspective of a Dungeon Master. And the reality is, Jim Hopper is incredibly important, and the reason why is he's the Muggle male, right? Like, he's the guy who's like, oh, that nerd stuff, D&D doesn't matter, F's around, and then finds out, and is like, oh, these kids who play Dungeons and Dragons know more than me as the chief of police, right? Dungeons and Dragons rocks, Muggles suck, right? That's Jim Hopper. He F's around and he finds out, right? Like, and I think, and I love the Jim Hopper character as portrayed by David Harbour, because that's the world, right? Like, I think the whole world is like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons just a game, right? I think even a bunch of Dungeon Masters and Dragon Masters are like, oh, Dungeons and Dragons is nothing. Like, no, you're not getting it, right? This is a transformation of human narrative. This is a human improvement engine. This is the most extensive, active, engaged intellectual property in the world, and things happening on Dungeons and Dragons don't happen anywhere else, right? Like, and I will say, like, Dungeons and Dragons, David Harbour owes his career to Dungeons and Dragons, right? And his own acknowledging when he had this huge opportunity come before him, which was given to him by Dungeons and Dragons and the Duffer Brothers. So I love Jim Hopper. He's a great character because David Harbour made him a great character. He's the Muggle male who does not understand what's happening with Dungeons and Dragons. And I think the whole world's like this. We just don't The world doesn't realize how important Dungeons and Dragons is, but you F around and you find out. Like I think people are starting to realize, oh man, like Disney ain't got nothing on Dungeons and Dragons. Marvel ain't got nothing on Dungeons and Dragons. Star Wars has nothing on Dungeons and Dragons. Yes, Gary Gygax is the third most important American in history, right? George Washington, Harriet Tubman, Gary Gygax. That's America right there. Every single word you just heard is my humble opinion on Stranger Things. The important part is when I get to hear your humble opinion on Stranger Things, when you get in the comments and send your traffic. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a fetch millennium.